What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Bonus Point Rugby Podcast. Huge episode today because we've got a record-breaking Super Rugby Pacific final to break down, and then we're diving straight into Dave Rennie's first All Black squad, what it tells us about the direction of New Zealand rugby. This one has everything with a 60-5 Hurricanes demolition against the Chiefs, huge selection calls, new caps, and a veteran uniting this new All Blacks squad and initiative from Japan. A very familiar face, but some serious debates around form versus experience. I'm really excited to jump onto this, so let's dive in. This is the Bonus Point Rugby Podcast. All right, everyone, welcome to the pod. Today, we're doing a full finals review of the 2026 Super Rugby Pacific final between the Hurricanes and the Chiefs. This one is going to hurt as a Chiefs fan, but as a Super Rugby Pacific and an All Blacks fan, this one really does feel like a season that changed the conversation. The Hurricanes didn't just win the competition, they led in with tries with 113 and points with 745 points. Then backed it up with a 60-5 demolition of the Chiefs in that final. That combination of season-long production and finals dominance is what makes them a clear story of the year. The Chiefs were excellent too. I think we all have to give them credit, finishing second in both tries and points with 89 and 615. And you could see what they have been building over the past 4 years. You could see the excellent season they had and how many dominant performances they also had. But whether you want to blame the weather, the Chiefs not being able to close it in finals, or any other reason or excuse you want to give, the gap between the two top teams became very obvious on the biggest night of the season. And that's very difficult for me to say because I'm always a Chiefs advocate. I know what they've brought. Even with John O'Gibbs as the new head coach coming in, stepping in after Clayton McMillan had left, he brought a lot to this squad. But I do want to break down this into three parts. First, the season as a whole, the teams that defined it. Second, the statistical leaders and breakout players. And third, the All Blacks selection debate, where the real arguments now sit because so many of these performances have rolled directly into national team discussions. So the first part, the season at large, I think the headline of 2026 is simple. The Hurricanes were the best attacking side in the competition from start to finish. Leading the league in tries and points is one thing, but doing it while also finishing the season with that kind of control in the final is what makes this feel historically significant. The thing that stood out the most about the Hurricanes was not just about the volume of points, but the way they produced them. They weren't living off broken play or random momentum swings. They were constantly and consistently creating field position, winning collisions, turning half chances into full breaks. That's why they were able to put up 745 points across the campaign and still look like they had another gear when it mattered most. The Chiefs were also the best team when it came to that sporadic style play. Were able to play with the counterattack, were able to play in their own field and make things out of nothing. They were clearly a top-tier attacking side and deserved their place in the final. But what the final showed us was the Hurricanes had more layers. They could hurt you in structure, in transition, and in broken field play, which the Chiefs had done very well this season as well. It made them so much harder to be contained. That's what separates good teams from champion teams. I think that's why the huge conversation is of why everybody is trying to get Bordeaux, who are the European champions, to come and play the Hurricanes to see how they stack up, because both teams are excellent at what they do. Great teams can score in multiple ways and still look calm when the game changes shape. If you look at the Hurricanes season in total, the most impressive thing is how repeatable their attack became. It wasn't just a one-off surge. They led the competition in tries. It tells you they weren't relying on a single player or a single phase pattern. You could see that the whole time. Anytime that a defense gave them something, or any times the system or calls didn't go their way, the whole system was built to produce with a whole team. I think if you look at individual players, though, Cam Roigard was central to that. He gave them tempo, control, the ability to keep the attack moving without overcomplicating it. Even when he did have his injury, I think Inari did very well at trying to step in and control that game and give them an opportunity to really continue to be themselves and focus on that control and doing what they do best. Behind him was Ruben Love. He grew into this season a genuine game controller, and by the time the final arrived, he looked like a player capable of steering high-pressure matches rather than just surviving it. I think that was also a criticism in his past where he was too young, he was too inexperienced to hold on to that situation. So I think now he's weathered the storm. He's come out of his previous seasons and he's really shown that he is now that key piece. And we can talk about why that led to his All Black selection. Moving down the back line, I know Geordie Barrett was another piece. I think coming out of his season with Leinster, everybody loved to see what they saw from him in that. And we obviously know he provides that power, kicking options off both feet, shape across the field. When you have a player like Geordie in the middle of a system like the Hurricanes did, it becomes much easier to vary the point of attack and keep defenders guessing, showing those layers. I think once you get to the outside backs, you've got so many threats. You've got obviously Naholo that came in on the back end, but Josh Morby finished with 17 tries. Huge number, no matter how you look at it. When one winger gets 17 tries in a season, though, it's crazy to see that you also have Fehi Vinianoko. He was right there too. Also finishing on 17 tries. So it tells you the Hurricanes had multiple players who could turn opportunities into points at a very high rate, and also that these two players are potential generational talents. You know that one season doesn't define a player. It's consistency in what they can do to back it up. But this was a generational season for these two individuals, and that's what led to their All Black selection, in my opinion. This is the real beauty about the Hurricane season. They didn't just have one star. I could continue to go down into the forward pack as well. You've got the likes of Karifi captaining. You've got Brad Shields with that experience. You've got Almua as that true person who's showing that he could be that number one selection for hooker with the amount of times he was able to break lines and how consistent he was with this set piece. You've got two incredible front rowers in Tossie, and it's going to be so great to see Numia in that All Blacks environment. Both of them outstanding seasons. The final against the Chiefs was the clearest possible expression of this season. I thought it was going to come down to the wire. I did see in the first 20 minutes, we didn't change. We didn't make adjustments to the wind. We kept trying to force things and kept trying to rely on our style of play, forcing passes. A 60-5 score line in a title match, though, is not just about one team playing well. It's about one team arriving with a sharper understanding of who they are, what they want to do, how to force their style on the opposition. The Hurricanes' performance was defined by pace. Pass accuracy as well was definitive. It was something where you could see the Chiefs, like I said, were just forcing passes. Support lines, I thought, were great by the Chiefs as well, but it was that ruthless finishing aspect that the Hurricanes had that made them such a dominant part of this final. And they also didn't need many chances to make the game look out of reach. Once they got the momentum, they were able to keep the Chiefs pinned down for long stretches without them getting back into rhythm. That final showed how difficult it is to recover when a team like the Hurricanes start controlling both field position and tempo. I think when the subs came in, your Josh Jacobs and a few other players, the Chiefs did try to stay in it, but I think the Hurricanes just kept finding answers. When you finish a season with 113 tries and 745 points, then add a 60-point final, you're not just the best team of the year, you're now the benchmark. And I think speaking on the benchmark, coming to see the other team, let's chat a little bit about the Chiefs, because I think they deserve a proper season review, no matter what you think about that final. and what the end was, finishing second with 89 tries and 615 points is a strong return. You don't make it to 4 finals in a row without being one of the most dangerous teams in the competition all year. The issue for them was not talent. It's always been the execution in the final when the pressure level rises. In a season where the Hurricanes could draw on more collective cohesion, I think you could also argue that the Chiefs did have that cohesion as well, but they looked more vulnerable when opponents disrupted their rhythm. Could they always bring it back? And similar to, if I use a basketball analogy where we saw the Knicks have some of these amazing groundbreaking comebacks, they did that throughout the season. They still had game breakers. They still had powerful forwards. They still had enough attacking talent to win a lot of games. But the final exposed how hard it is to overcome a side that is peaking at exactly the right time. I think for last year, the Crusaders were the Chiefs' kryptonite. It always has been. Previously to that, it was the Blues, and I think we always seem to peak in the wrong portions. I think the semi-final was when we peaked because we finally got over the hump. We finally got that black cat out off our back, which was the Crusaders in that semi-final, and we came out humming. But it's really tough to go from that to coming into a final against a team that is so productive and so efficient like the Hurricanes. But again, the Chiefs' season to me still matters. It sets up the next phase. There are a strong group of people coming out of that, that also we have a new coaching era that really matters for this club. John O'Gibbs stepping in changes the way the team is likely to think and what they may prioritize over the next cycle. If they can turn that quality into more durability when it comes to finals, they'll continue to stay in the title conversation. Okay, let's chat a little bit about stats, because the stats this season help explain why certain players became impossible to ignore. At the team level, the Hurricanes led the competition in tries and points. We've already spoken about that. The Chiefs followed as well. That gap matters because it says the Hurricanes weren't just slightly better. They were clearly the most productive attacking team in the league. The Crusaders, the Blues, and the Brumbies also had good seasons in different areas, but no team matched the Hurricanes' overall output. I think at the player level, you got to look at Josh Morby, 17 tries, Fehi as well, 17 tries. The attack was distributed in a way that is very hard to defend for a full season. And I think one thing to highlight on a point standpoint, you've got to look at Ruben Love. 138 points. It's a major return for a player who was being talked about all season as a possible answer at first 5. We know that Richie Moe's coming back. We know that Beauden Barrett's aging out, and he hasn't been as productive as we'd want him to be, especially in the All Black jersey. So Ruben Love is that kind of next cycle, that answer to the fly half jersey. And the fact that he can also cover fullback and handle multiple game states, similar to a D-Mac, where he's played that 23 and he's been a very great option to come off the bench and very versatile, you start to understand why the conversation around him has changed so quickly. When we're looking at the production on the defensive side, Sam Darry leading with 209 tackles, another useful number, not because they're a flashy number, but it shows the kind of season that earns trust and probably what gave him the opportunity to be selected in this All Black squad. One of the reasons. High tackle counts usually don't come from teams and players who are under pressure often, but also from guys who keep just showing up and doing the hard work. This matters in selection because test coaches always want players who can cope with volume. I think from a kicking standpoint as well, Ryan Lonergan leading the kicks with 149 is a reminder that kicking remains central to how the game is played. Territory still matters. Exit quality still matters. Contestable kicking still matters. Even in a season dominated by the Hurricanes' attack, the players who control the kicking game are the ones who help shape that field position. And I think we've been talking a lot about the backs in this situation, but one person who I really want to highlight and who has been rewarded with this selection, Xavier Numia. He deserves mention because his selection case was built on robustness. It was a theme all throughout the All Blacks discussion: who had high minutes, who stayed durable, who could hold their level throughout a full Super Rugby campaign. Numia fit that profile. I think another player you can look at again, I'm going to mention him, is Sam Darry, another player whose season wasn't easy to overlook when it comes to highlights. But the All Blacks selection conversation is where the season really turns into something bigger. This squad is really starting to feel like it was built around one core idea. Pick players who are robust, versatile, and already performing at a high level in a current environment that is very tough to sustain. This is why the Hurricane season matters. So many of their players put up numbers that made it impossible to ignore them. You could argue a variety of different things in regards to selections, but their performances week in and week out does start to really paint that picture. So let's move into talking about the All Black selections, because I think the first thing we have to start with is Ardie Savea as captain. He gives you leadership. He gives you experience. He gives you power, and he gives you consistency. In a squad built around a new era, he is the sort of player who anchors both camps, that experience and that opportunity to show that new age. He's been in the environment for a long time. He is a generational talent. But I think Dave Rennie said it best. He doesn't say much. He leads by his actions. And when he does talk, people listen. And I think he is a very humble man. He leads very highly with his faith as well. And that's why a lot of people tend to gravitate to him. He's such a humble, lovely guy who's also a beast on the field. I think he's going to be a great leader. And I think it's going to be something where, obviously, with Scott Barrett moving out with his injury, and he won't be taking on that role if and when he does return to the All Blacks, it paints a clear picture about where this team is going to be going. When we're looking at the back row conversation, though, this is where it starts to get pretty interesting. I did personally think du Plessis-Griffey was hard done by. I don't think there is much that he could do during this Super Rugby Pacific season to warrant a selection. He led from the front in a lot of different ways, and he showed that he is a test quality player. The problem with this is that he is, in a lot of people's opinion, and in mine as well, a specialty 7. I don't think he would be as productive in the number 6 jersey or in the number 8 jersey. And I think you have a variety of players who have been selected who can be placed all across the back row. When you're looking at one of his teammates, Peter Larkai, he's one of the best examples of a player whose output matched the role. He gives the All Black a genuine number 8 profile. He's physical, he's direct, he's capable of taking pressure on the gain line. It's rare and an important thing to see in Test rugby. And then you also move to a Wallace Satiti, who's equally as valuable because of his flexibility and just his uniqueness, what he brings to a game. He can cover multiple loose forward roles. It gives coaches a lot of options around bench and starting trio. In a test environment, we've seen it with the Springboks, we've seen it with a variety of different other teams. The versatility can be the difference between carrying the right balance and carrying the wrong. 2, maybe 3 selections were question marks for a lot of people when this came out. Simon Parker, Luke Jacobson, and Anton Segner. I personally love what Simon Parker brings to the All Blacks team because I think he adds another profile altogether. If the coaches want a big-bodied forward who can change the tone of contact late in games, he gives them that. He's not the same type of player as a Satiti or Larkai, and that's why he matters. He changes the makeup of the group. And also, I don't think we do really have a traditional 6 at the moment. We have a couple of options that I think would be a good fit, but I think if we're looking at this, Simon Parker could play that role. Luke Jacobson can also play that role. Do I think he's still test match ready versus Super Rugby? Unclear. I would need to see him in an All Blacks environment again because I haven't really seen him much in the All Blacks environment to really see what he can do. I still think he can get the job done if called upon, but I would most likely play him off the bench because he is that versatile, can play 6, 7, 8 across the board. He brings that mongrel. He's experienced. He's smart. And he's deadly on defense. But when we come into Anton, the argument is he is also a specialist 7. So why is Karifi not picked over Anton Segner? In a squad of versatile athletes, there is still value in having a true fetcher who understands his role and can pressure the breakdown from the start. But I also think something that really brought another notch to his selection is his height, his opportunity to get up fast in lineouts. I think his body type and just how he's been productive with the Blues, I think he brings that as well. And also I think the Blues didn't really give him an opportunity to show his true self, and he was still able to be so productive on the field. So if that's what he can do with the Blues team that isn't fully developed, isn't the most dangerous team on the field, where Karifi has all these pieces around him where he can be exceptionally an outstanding rugby player, I would love to see what the All Blacks environment brings to Anton Segner. So am I sold on Segner? Not yet. I need to see him in the environment. I need to see him in games. But do I understand the selection and why he was chosen? I can get it. Let's move on to the midfield group, because I think that's the hardest one to pick because there are so many good answers. I think for me, you have to look at Quinn Tupaia because his season this year was outstanding. He is an attacking weapon, and on the breakdown, he brings so much disruption to the breakdown to either slow it down or get that turnover. He brings direct running, line-breaking ability, the sort of physical presence that can change how a defense sets up. If the All Blacks want to create a stress in the middle of the field, he is one of the players that can do it. However, I do need to see what Dave Rennie's plan is, because if it is to bend a line consistently, Quinn's your man. If it is to set a platform and be a little bit more tactical, I think he can still get the job done. I just want to see how he would be utilized in that fashion. Jordie Barrett also gives you the most security. He brings size, kicking, passing, experience at the highest level. If you want a player who can cover multiple roles and still influence the game with ball in hand, Jordie is one of the first names you write down. And I think outside him, you saw Billy Proctor, again, had a strong season. I've had a question mark on Billy for a while in the All Blacks jersey because I've always seen him have really strong seasons in Super Rugby. And when he did get his opportunity, he didn't really show me, especially on the defensive end, what he could do in a 13 jersey or in the centers. Again, centers, I've said it in the past, it's one of the most difficult positions to defend, especially on set piece. So I'm gonna give him that. It's not like I'm saying it's an easy job and he can just get it done. And I also know that he's hardworking, he's reliable, he's good in both phases, but I don't know if he's going to be the guy this season that will be getting that starting jersey. Could he come off the bench potentially? Yeah, maybe. But also, I don't know if that limits us if we have someone drop with an injury or we need to reshuffle. Anton Leonard-Brown is the selection that a lot of people are questioning. I have always said he has been a cog in the All Blacks. Has he been the best player? Has he been a standout? No, I can never say that. But has he been a strong piece we can always rely on in certain moments that does bring an element to the game? He brings something. Again, he's not perfect, but he had a strong year in Japan. I know, completely different than Super Rugby, but he still remains valuable because he can cover both 12 and 13. He understands test level detail. He adds composure under pressure. I've always seen that in him. His selection is built on trust and versatility. So the big theme here is that none of these midfielders are really redundant. They all solve different problems. But who are we going to select at 12 and 13? When we move further into the halfback in the first 5 situation, this part of the squad feels especially important because it shapes the identity of the whole team. I think if you look at continuity, Cam Roigard should be at the top of the halfback depth chart. It's just a given. He's so much further ahead of everyone else in this squad. Even though I love Cortez Ratzma and what he brings, he is another high-level option with a strong distribution and game management. And Kyle Preston, I've loved him since I've seen him on any game. He comes in as a curveball because a lot of people said Noah Hotham had an extremely gifted season. He had an outstanding season, but he's a very specific kind of curveball. His kicking game, because he can kick off both feet, and his role as a closer makes him a very smart selection, in my opinion. And I think when you look at continuity, like I was saying before, Ruben Love, who's been playing with Cam Roigard, if he's your number one choice, I think you have to pick him, especially with the role he's on. Beauden Barrett and D-Mac, you know what they get. I personally would love to see Love get an opportunity and D-Mac play that 23 role. This isn't because I think Ruben is a better player than D-Mac. I think it is because Ruben is able to start our game and we know what we can get from D-Mac in a closing All Blacks performance. We've seen it before. This is why I've said he's been the most dangerous 23 for our All Blacks team, because you can put him at fullback, you can put him at 10. He's needed at wing, you can put him at wing. You can put him in so many different positions and he just brings such a different element and vibe into the game. Beauden is the veteran with the biggest test pedigree. We know what he brings into an All Blacks jersey, but I don't personally think he is the option for us at 10 at the moment. If you look at the trio, it's a strength because it gives the coaches options. It tells you they're open to different game plans depending on the opposition. But in my opinion, I think we should go with Love just to see how we go. I just want to get him his opportunity, get him his reps, see how he does in that environment. Outside backs, this is where the strike power is going to come down to it, because I think Will Jordan is the obvious starting point. He remains one of the best attacking fullbacks in the world and adds enormous value through his finishing, his positioning, his ability to turn half breaks into points. His 14 clean breaks are the one clearest statistic, reminders of how dangerous he still is. And especially because he had part of this season off due to injury. If he can still produce that, I can't wait to see what he produces in an All Black jersey. When you're looking at wingers, I think Caleb Clark is the selection for one of our wings, power, physicality, especially in contact under the high ball, which is what we struggled with a lot. He's the kind of winger who changes the feel of the defensive line just by being on the park. And then you look at Josh Morby and Fehi. Both finished with 17 tries. That kind of production should absolutely matter and be rewarded in selection conversations. You don't ignore that level of output. It tells you those players are doing something repeatable and valuable. I personally would love to see Fehi get his first opportunity. Josh, I still want to see him play. But Fehi, I think, is the game breaker. I think he's going to be an excellent piece. Leroy Carter also adds another layer of depth. He may not have the same headline numbers, but you saw what he did in some of the playoff matches. He brings coverage, he brings versatility, and in a squad this competitive, that matters too. I think I remember hearing about Sam Whitelock talking about some of the All Blacks veterans when he was coming into the squad and listening to those conversations where it's not about giving a player a jersey because it's their time. It's you come into the environment and you fight for that jersey. It doesn't matter if the old dog can't learn new tricks. He's still going to be on the hunt and he's still going to be pushing you to say, this is my jersey. You've got to come grab it from me. And that's what we need in the All Blacks. We need more mongrel. We need more competition. So I think overall, the outside backs is pretty simple. There are too many good options. That's a luxury. It makes selections difficult. But I think put them in camp and see how they come out and then just go from there. In the type 5, it's going to be tough to pick. I think the selectors have a good mix of size, experience, and upside. I think if you look at De Groot, he had an excellent season. George Bauer is a question mark for me because it's not that I don't think he can get the job done. I just think that we've got a couple of other players who are now on a rise and are now the new standard where George can come off the bench and he can play a big role, experience-wise, composure-wise. He brings a lot to this team. So I don't think that he shouldn't be in the conversation, but I think he should be more so in a finisher mode where you have guys like a Numia, a Fletcher Newell, a Tossie, Lomax. They give the squad a deep front row. And that's not to say that I don't think George Bower can bring something. I think his inclusion was because he forced his way into the conversation through late season form. That's exactly the kind of thing we need, especially in this position as well. But I do think you want to give those opportunities to a Newell, a De Groot. I'd love to see Numia get a shot as well. In the locks, Tupouniua, he's been the standard. He's been outstanding. Patrick Tuipulotu, I've been on numerous conversations saying how much I think he is valued in this team, whether he's starting, whether he's coming off the bench. I personally think he's a better positionally for our bench because, again, he can bring experience, he can bring composure, he can bring physicality, he can really break a game open. Josh Lord, someone who's been consistent in this Chiefs team throughout the whole season, who's physical, he's outstanding. And Sam Darry, I think they, again, create and do different jobs. Tuipulotu, he brings that brute force and experience. Vai brings all-round athleticism. Lord and Darry just add depth and line-out value. And again, I hate to go back to the same point, but Sam Darry's 209 tackles also reinforce the point that he is the player who does a lot of the invisible work that coaches love, and that's what Dave Rennie loves. What the Type 5 tells you is the squad has been built to survive the physical side of Test rugby. When we go against South Africa, that matters. Once the game gets into the winter, contact and set piece become non-negotiable. That's what we need. Okay, with that in mind, we do have 3 games coming up. First game on 4th of July, starting off with France at One New Zealand Stadium. Then we head over we play Italy on the 10th of July. And then lastly, we do play Ireland before we head over to South Africa. We play the Stormers, we play the Sharks, we play the Bulls, and then we get our first test match against South Africa on the 22nd of August. Head over to play the Lions, South Africa twice again, and then we head over to Baltimore, where I'll be at that game. It's going to be outstanding. So I think if we look at everything coming through, I'm very interested to see where the execution comes down and the selections that come out of this camp. But that is your full season review. That is your All Black selection chat. The next question is whether these selections and this style can translate fast enough when test season starts. Lastly, before I head off, I am going to choose my starting 15 for the first test match. 1 through 8, we have to go De Groot, Taylor, Lomax, Tupouniua, Tuipulotu, Parker, Ardie Savea, obviously, and Wallace Satiti. I think off the bench, we've got to have a Tossie. We've got to have a Fletcher Newell. A Sam Darry or a Josh Lord would be a good option. I think Sam Darry is going to be huge for us. So I could switch Tuipulotu with Darry. And then having Peter Larkai come off the bench for us would be big. I don't think Segner's going to get his shot. I don't think Luke Jacobson is going to be selected for the first test match, but maybe against in Italy. In the backs, we've got to go Cam Roigard and Ruben Love. The continuity has just been showing week in and week out, and you've just got to trust form, especially with them being just Ruben Love with the top point scorer and Cam Roigard just being on the tear. Will Jordan has got to be my fullback. A select on form. He's been outstanding. On one wing, we've got to go Caleb Clark, and I think Fehi's got to be our other wing. In the centres, we've got to go a Geordie Barrett and a Quinn Tupaia. Although both of them have been playing predominantly at 12, we can shift a Tupaia to 13 and he can get the job done. Cortez, he's got to come off the bench for me. Although I love what Carl Preston brings to the game, Cortez has just been outstanding. He's been a high-level bench option since we've placed him in the All Blacks. He's been great. D-Mac has been an outstanding 23 for me, or 22. Let's give Josh Morby an opportunity as well. Josh and Fehi, no matter who you start, you've got to place them both in that game and see how we go. That's the big story. The Hurricanes just gave New Zealand rugby a blueprint for what form, cohesion and confidence can look like at full speed. And now the All Black selectors have to decide how much of that they can trust right away. Reminder, I will be in Denver July 4th before the next podcast drops. catching up on USA versus Portugal and Zimbabwe playing Tonga. Really excited to see what the Rugby Nations Cup is going to bring. And also that same weekend, the Nations Championship is going to be starting with the likes of All Blacks, South Africa, Ireland, and so many other great teams. We will see you next week. Thank you for tuning into the Bonus Point Rugby podcast. Have a good one.